Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now, here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What if you could double your energy naturally without caffeine or stimulants in just 3 short months? It's not only possible, you can transform every aspect of your health if you follow the 12-week blueprint we've created for you in the Awesome Health System. The Awesome Health System is a free course where you receive a daily video lesson spanning the most cutting-edge secrets for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mindset, and education. It's something most companies would charge hundreds of dollars for, yet you get it for free when you go to bioptimizers.com. To access your course, register to download the PDF report called 3 Phases of Bioptimization, which gets you access to the report and daily access to the first lesson in the 12-week, 84-day Awesome Health course.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast, and I'm broadcasting today live from Sedona, Arizona, so you'll notice my background's a little different. Got my hat on, the sun is shining, and it's a beautiful day, but this is an important month. If you don't know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so a woman completes breast cancer treatment, rings the bell, gives hormone-blocking drugs, and are told to hope for the best. Recurrence of disease is greatest for the first 2 years after treatment has been completed. But there is a great deal a woman can do to increase those odds. Recurrence is not necessarily random. And today we're going to talk about incorporating holistic and integrative strategies that can work to reduce the risk of reoccurrence of breast cancer. And today we have none other than Dr. Carol Lourie, who is a dedicated practitioner with over 3 decades of clinical experience as a naturopath, acupuncturist, and homeopath. She's helped thousands of women recover their health after a breast cancer diagnosis through her holistic protocols involving nurturing nutrition, targeted supplementation, healthy and joyful lifestyle changes, and an empowered mindset. The path of healing helps to discover not only who you are, but enables you to create the life of your dreams. Dr. Carol supports this by addressing the emotional and spiritual components of breast cancer so deep healing can occur. Welcome to the show. This is going to be a real exciting one, Dr. Carol. It's so nice to have you.
I'm so excited and honored to be here.
And I know you're coming to Sedona soon to speak. So let's just start off with maybe a little bit of background history, as well as what perked your interest and focus into breast cancer, which is a devastating condition for so many women in the world, yet it's very misunderstood, not just from the diagnosis, but all of the components that are involved in that, if I'm correct.
So I was always interested in being a doctor and always interested in healing. And my path, I was living in a spiritual community in New York in the 70s, and my roommate had cancer. And I went with her to Cornell, and the doctor said, "We've given you a ton of radiation. There's nothing more that we can do for you." And basically she was 26 and they told her she was going to die. And she said, "That's not my path." And she just did research and discovered this chiropractor who was doing detoxifying diets using iridology. Now, this was in 1977, and that was before the word detox became standard household word. Nobody really ever heard about that, more or less, what the heck is iridology? And I started working in his office as his assistant. And here is where my mindset was when I started. A young girl came in with really bad acne, and I thought to myself, why is she here? She should be taking antibiotics. You have acne, you take antibiotics, everything's fine. I was very naive. Now I would never think that. But she came in, and a month later she came back and her skin was better, and she had started losing weight. And 2 months later she came back and her skin was all cleared up and she was just great. And there were stories of that I saw, either people who had been harmed by the medical profession or people who had not been helped. And then one day I was going through this huge pile of paperwork, and there was this catalog to the National College of Naturopathic Medicine. It was like bells went off, and I went, oh, I just found where I'm going. And I moved to Portland, Oregon, and I graduated from there. And then I moved to California and got my acupuncture license. And that was many years ago. And you're not really good at what you do until you've been doing it for 15 years. And I have 15 years times 2 point whatever. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm never bored. I always love my work, and I feel blessed and grateful every day. And then how I got specifically into breast cancer, my dear friend was diagnosed with this disease, and I volunteered and said, committed to her, I'm going to go through every treatment with you. And that took 18 months. And for women who have had this, you understand there's the biopsy, then there's chemo, radiation, surgery, and then you ring the bell and it's like they tell you you're fine and you're a mess. So that was the beginning of, as soon as she got diagnosed, I really began to study about cancer intensely. And we went to the oncology office at UCSF, and the doctor looked at her blood work and gave us this look like, what are you doing? And we're thought, oh my God, something's the matter. And it turned out that she then said, this is the blood work of somebody who's not sick, who's not in the middle of chemo. So I want to know what you're doing, because I want all my patients to do it too. And that was the beginning of Empowered Against Recurrence. I didn't realize it at the time, but my practice filled up with women with breast cancer in referral from the oncologist. And then it became bigger because there's breast cancer throughout the world. And 7.8 million women will be diagnosed within the US and Canada in the last 5 years. So it's more than a month, but it's nice that this month brings focus to it, because it encourages women to get their mammograms and to really pay attention.
You bring up a good point here, and I want to expand on that a little bit. And I think there is a deception within diagnosis, and it's an honest deception. It's not a malicious one, and that is that people think that they literally got cancer the day of the diagnosis. But really, I think it's and it's not a one thing, it's a series of compounding situation or environmental factors, a variety of internal medicine components. We'll let you unpack that in a moment, that ultimately led to the development of what we call cancer. My question is, if those things are sequential and build up over time, wouldn't it make sense that people could reverse that trend if they understand those mechanisms that led to the diagnosis? How would you approach that ideology?
Well, the doctor that I studied with iridology, he believed that if you fast long enough, that the cells, which are unhealthy in their mechanisms, as you're describing it, they'll revert back to their healthy version. And you just have to keep fasting until it happens. And he would do water fasting for people for 40 days. I mean, you can't do that by yourself. Everybody, don't even think about it. You need to do it under medical supervision. And he had animals. His cats get sick, and he would fast them. So he was very dedicated to this approach. I think that that's a complicated question. I said, first of all, you're talking about prevention. So if you have a family history of either colon or breast cancer, first line or second line, and you know that the woman in your family had breast cancer, and perhaps she was tested and has the BRCA1 or 2 gene, which increases your statistical risk of getting it. There's nutrigenetics and nutriepigenetics, and how are we going to use lifestyle and environmental factors in what we eat to either turn on those difficult genes. I don't want to use the word bad, but they're difficult genes, versus keeping them quiet in the off position. So if you know that you have a family history or a predisposition to getting any disease, whether it's breast cancer, colon cancer, autoimmune, whatever, ideally you want to begin to institute healthy living choices, which includes your lifestyle, what you're eating, how you're exercising, toxins in your home, the whole rigmarole, exposure to EMFs, all of that. And then you maybe you can see what happens. But once you've had breast cancer, the cow has left the barn, so to speak. But that doesn't mean after you've been diagnosed, you can't really do everything you can to get those cells to start paying attention to the rules of stop and go, to make your body inhospitable to cancer. And there's a lot that you can do for that, to reduce the side effects of the drugs that they put you on. So basically what I'm saying is, you cannot be a couch potato and think that you're going to have good health. And it's very difficult to do all of this on your own. So that's where people like myself come in, because for some reason, especially with breast cancer, women think that they have superpowers. They research on the internet, on Dr. Google, and they come in and they have 25 bottles of supplements. They don't know what's good, what's bad. Do they need this? Everybody's telling women to buy this, buy that, take this, and it's a mess. So there's very specific ways that we work to make your body inhospitable to cancer through supplements and nutrition.
So let's say I'm a woman who just got diagnosed with breast cancer, and what are the stages that maybe people experience, and then how would they implement, say, a more holistic approach that may not be available to them through their oncologist?
Great question. I think the initial stage is one of shock. And even like my friend was very upset, and she felt betrayed by her body, because she said, what the heck's going on? I'm a healthy person. I eat organic. Why did this happen? She happened to be Ashkenazi Jew, which increased her statistics a little bit more. But sometimes you don't know why you have breast cancer. And I think it's important to try to figure it out it's not like a self-blame thing. You didn't do anything wrong. Women have incredibly stressful lives. All of that can add up in the moment. And then you could have had an upsetting or traumatic experience 20 years ago, which really carries through as in your cells as an adult, which is so why I always incorporate emotional healing as part of a healing plan. But so there's that initial stage of you're diagnosed, and all of a sudden you're put on a very rushed slide to, okay, you have this problem, let's schedule your biopsy, and then you're pushed into chemotherapy or surgery. It's not a surgical emergency. So it's important to take your time. You can take 2 weeks. You can gather your healing team. You can get a second opinion. You don't need to go into this rushed moment. And cancer has an energy of rushing because it's cells that have decided to stop paying attention to the rules of stop and go. So they're always rushing. And then that is implicated in how you feel and how the doctors are responding to you. The best thing you can do is be centered and take a moment to think about, what am I going to need to do to accommodate my lifestyle and my family and work obligations, because I'm not going to be feeling well sometimes. Do I want a second opinion? Do I want to bring in a healing team of integrative natural doctors and practitioners, someone like myself, an acupuncturist, a Reiki healer? What do I want to do to stay as healthy as possible during treatment and prepare for chemotherapy and radiation, and then work on reducing my risk of recurrence once all of that is done? So that's the initial stage, and that takes quite a bit of organization. Because when I ask women, write down what you do in the morning before, if you have children, what do you do in the morning before you get the kids out of the house or before you get yourself to work? There's often 35 things on that list. Who's going to do all of those if you wake up and you can't get out of bed? They don't go away.
It's very pertinent. So stage one is create a space of time that you can actually start objectively looking at the aspects of your life. Number two, I would say, and I think this is sensible, is assemble a support team around you of professionals with maybe a very different bent that can work synergistically for your model.
Correct.
And then third would be ensure that you're addressing maybe some of the emotional side of the equation that won't be addressed in your treatment through medical models.
Absolutely. That's a great assessment of what I just said. Very good.
Cool. So then what? So now the lady's taken her 2 weeks. She's recognized, you know what? I'm going to need someone to help me with my family responsibilities. I've got to let people know at work, so that and most work situations I've found are very empathetic and compatible in these type of situations for the most part. And if they're not, you probably don't want to be there anyways.
I was just about to say, if they're not, you don't want to be there anyway. And that's a clue, because you brought up a really good point. A lot of things that you had adjusted because, it's not great, but I'll deal with it. Your tolerance for that kind of stuff really diminishes when you've been diagnosed. That's one of the ripple effects that can be very positive. It can lead you to make better decisions so you become more authentic of who you really are. I've had women change jobs. I've had women go back to school. I've had women decide that they hate what they're doing and they need to figure out what it is they want to do. So I think that's a really positive thing.
I think a lot of people have failed to recognize in a health crisis such as cancer, and I certainly don't want to minimize the impact of theirs, there is always the seeds of opportunity of rediscovery, because it's one of these diagnosis of a serious medical condition is it's a fulcrum point in your life of like, okay, obviously I'm getting some feedback that what I'm currently doing isn't working the way I'd like it to do. And now I have an opportunity and a reason, a valid reason to the world who I've overcommitted my responsibilities or misplaced my responsibilities to say, you know what? I'm doing a complete accounting of how I'm operating my life. And I'm determining what things have got to go and what things I've got to bring in or amplify. What are some of the things that women discover when they get this and they go through this process? Like, so I want to paint a picture for someone that might be having this situation right now to say, hey, okay, we can't change the diagnosis. Take your time, get your team together. But I always like to paint a positive vision for the future of, hey, here's an opportunity here. What are some of the things that you find women discovering when they go through this process beyond to say, hey, I want to do a new job or do this? What are some things that your experience has shown?
That they have overcommitted themselves to other people and activities that they don't really like. And as a homeopath, there are certain illnesses that have energies to them, and that's called a miasm in homeopathic terminology. And there is a miasm to breast cancer. And it's the rush, rush, rush. I have to do this. I have to do that. You're making a list. You're always feeling rushed. And there's a tendency for women to overcommit themselves to taking care of other people besides themselves at the detriment to themselves. So they sit down and they're doing the accounting, as you mentioned, and they look at the scale here and they go, oh my God, I'm doing 15 things that I don't really care about. I don't even like these people. And here's a clue. If you ask them to do something for you and they say no, or they're not available, these people are not your friends. And that's like, one of my expressions is let's pay attention to the clues. Like, let's really look at what's out there. That's a clue. So when the initial accounting is they're doing too much for other people and then they don't have time to take care of themselves.
So really it's about, I would say, putting on the reciprocity filter. Is the relationships and my commitments in life feeding me as much as I'm distributing my energy out to?
Mm-hmm.
And that's always an aha moment. And I think relationships, whether they're corporate relationships, business relationships, friendships, family relationships, emotional relationships, with the exception of kids.
Yeah, of course.
They're in a different category.
Yeah.
The reciprocity piece is usually the piece that eventually triggers a shift. If someone isn't being reciprocal in the exchange, and it becomes like I call it the internal accounting, a checks and balances. Like, wait a second, I keep writing checks in this relationship, but I don't see any return on my energetic investment. And that may be because how you set the relationship up. It may be how you've communicated, or it may be who you're setting up the relationship with. And that becomes an opportunity to reframe how you look at things. I think the other thing is to not make, I think one of the step offs that I've noticed is not to make everything a make wrong. It's just a make right. How do I make things right based on the information I have? And it's going to help alleviate those decisions, because often our identity is wrapped up in that. How much of the identity factor comes into cancer, or the diagnosis of cancer, or breast cancer in particular for women? Like, what have you noticed around that?
I think breast cancer and treatment is an identity stripper away, if that's a correct expression. It's not. I just made it up. It tends to strip away what women thought was important to them. I mean, they lose their hair. Right. It grows back, but there's that initial, oh my God, my hair is falling out. And then there are surgical moments which can radically shift your body. Mm-hmm. And treatment, if you don't have a mastectomy, and treatment, if you're getting radiation to your breasts, it often changes the shape of your breast. And then you're put on hormone therapy, and before you know it, you've gained 15 pounds and your pants don't fit. And you're having hot flashes, and you're in speedy menopause. So there is a lot that is taken away that women and everyone use to help us fit into the world. It's a reckoning moment of what's important, and how do you want to remake yourself fit, not just physically, but we always need to bring in the emotional, psychological, energetic, and spiritual or component. Bring that with you in all of your decisions, because you can get stuck in the negative and get really angry, and it's okay to be angry for 5 minutes. And then you want to work on, how can I shift this? Because that anger hurts you. And that's who it hurts the most. And I'm not saying there isn't a reason to be angry, but it's like, okay, I'm angry for 5 minutes, and now I'm going to get myself out of this, because you're angry because you're seeing yourself as a victim. And we're victims when we're children and bad things happen. But as adults, we can use our mindset to really shift how we're viewing what happens to us. And that makes a huge difference in how you heal and how you get through difficult moments.
So let's talk about, I think it's really sound advice. Let's talk about some of the components that you can implement in this process of, say, stripping away the identity that can create a rebirth in maybe what's more refined, or what's more essential, or what would be more conducive to the next phase of life moving forward. What are some of the things or tools that you have your clients use or advocate for that you've seen be effective?
Well, I want to tell a story about a poem that's 5,000 years old, and it's called The Descent of Inanna. And Sylvia Britton Pereira who's a Jungian analyst, wrote a book about it, and it was translated from, I don't know what language, but I have this tendency to feel that if something's been around for thousands of years and we still know about it, it has to be very deep and meaningful. So here's this poem where this woman is brought down to the underworld against her will, and she is put on meat hooks, and her flesh is being eaten by gnomes. And she keeps saying, I hate this, I want to come up. And the gnomes are saying to her, you're going to stay here as long as you need to, until what you don't need is left behind, and then you can go up. And Sylvia Britton Pereira, who's an analyst, took this poem and made it more relevant to women for nowadays. And really, there are times in life when you are put under the ground, and it is a descent. That's a Jungian analytic term, where you are being stripped away of stuff that you don't need. Now, if you fight that with your ego and you go, I hate this, I want to come up, you're never going to come up. You're going to stay there longer. The issue is to give into it and say, okay, I'm here. I have to really pay attention to what my psyche is telling me and really work on What don't I need? And when I come up, I'm going to be a different person. And that's what breast cancer is. So what is the next chapter? The next chapter, I think, is really acknowledging that you are different and you're determined to make that reflect who you are at a deeper level in all aspects, your relationship, your work, how you spend your free time, the quality of how you commit to others, and how, when you have energy, if you have energy, you have to be okay yourself. How are you giving back to make the world a little better place, even if you're only doing something for 3 hours once a month? I think giving back is very important. But as I said, you must be okay yourself. You don't want to feel horrible and then go volunteer. You have to have energy for that. So that's the general perspective. And how do we start with that? I mean, my program, we start with 5 steps. Nutrition is always the foundation of recovering your health from any illness. The standard American diet literally quadruples the cancer rate, not to mention autoimmune disease, gut problems, mental depression, emotional unwellness. It is a toxic overload. So you need to divorce yourself, and I don't use that word lightly, from what the standard American diet represents and who is making money from that, and really put yourself into a different relationship to food and wellness and supporting local organic farmers, all of that. That takes a long time. Creating new habits is not something that happens in a week. 100 days to make a new habit feel like a new activity, feel like a habit. Because you get used to, I have women negotiate with me. First of all, everybody says they eat oatmeal for breakfast and they think that's healthy. It's not healthy to eat oatmeal. Why? Even if sometimes people are putting in those instant packets that have sugar, even if it's organic steel cut oats, it's still a carbohydrate. And cancer, given a choice between carbs and oxygen for the cancer gas tank, will choose carbohydrates, i.e. sugar or glucose, to run their cells, even though it has to work twice as hard and get much less ATP or gas, so to speak. That's known as the Warburg effect. So that was discovered in 1918. So that's the beginning of cancer is a metabolic disease. So how you start your day in the morning gives the metabolic messaging of your cells. Are you starting it with sugar and oatmeal and coffee? And the cells go, oh, great, here comes more sugar. I'm just going to continue to grow. Or are you going to start your day with green tea and herbs and vegetables and a little bit of protein and fat? And then you're feeding your healthy cells and the cancer goes, hey, where's my food? And you go, nothing. You're getting nothing from me today. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And that takes a long time. Women negotiate, well, can I have gluten-free hot cereal? And I go, well, you can. It's not me telling you. It's what the science is telling you. You need to stop putting it on somebody else and start incorporating that into your being, because you don't listen to people. It won't stick. Oh, Carol's making me do this. It doesn't work like that. We're adults. We don't like to be told what to do.
So that's first step. Step one is taking ownership of your nutrition and building the habits, which is going to be at least 100 days. Then what?
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with Masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's ZYMES.com, and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Then we talk about supplements. Supplements are critical. I'm a big favor of supplements. Why? People say, can I get everything from my food? And unfortunately, even when we're healthy, even if you're eating 100% organic, it's very difficult because as we age, we have different metabolic, nutritional needs and requirements. And that's number one. Number two, a woman has been through chemo, radiation, surgery, some version of that, and her gut has been severely disrupted. She's put very intense drugs in her body. Radiation is a whole nother story in itself. It creates an enormous amount of oxidative stress. This is not something the radiation oncologist talks with you about. It can create more aggressive cancers in the opposite breast. I mean, there is a whole bunch of side effects that they sort of gloss over. So how do we recover from that? Even I've had women come in post-radiation 5 years later and they never recovered their energy. That's because their mitochondria were impacted and they need help. You need supplements for that. That's number one. Number two, you need supplements that are made to pharmaceutical quality standards, not that you're purchasing over the internet or at the health food store. And you need a practitioner who's done due diligence to find out who those companies are. So that's a very important aspect. The fourth component of this is it's not a haphazard protocol. You need certain supplements at a time to do certain activities. There's restorative protocols, there's detoxifying protocols, there's a kill cycle protocol. These are complex protocols, and you need somebody who knows what you need, when you need it, and how to guide you through it. That's the second step.
Awesome. 3. What would step 3 be?
There's a beautiful plane. Step 3 is recovering from the trauma of cancer, and not just cancer, but of your life. Getting through cancer treatment is not an easy moment, and there is bound to be some kind of upsetting or traumatic experiences. So we need to acknowledge that. You need to have a safe place for that, because the doctors who work in oncology, they sort of get immune to everything that happens, and it's very difficult for them to hold on to their sensitivity of what is a reality for a woman after she's had a mastectomy and she looks at her body for the first time. I mean, you can read about it and they say we're taking off your breast and you're going to have a scar and bandages. But after all of that, the reality is not easy. And not to mention, if there's upsetting or traumatic experiences that have happened in the past, how is that brought into the conversation and how is it influencing your present? Because what we don't seem to know about, what's unconscious, is what tends to bite us in the rear end. So paying attention to your dreams and really asking your psyche to reveal what is in your blockage, what's blocking you. The psyche will reveal to you what you're ready to hear when you're ready to hear it, and not give you too much so you don't get overwhelmed. And it takes a lot of feminine support to really adjust to how your body's been changed. And your partner, whether it's a man or a woman, we need to be inclusive. Most people do not know how to speak to a woman who's had a mastectomy after that's happened. They're like, there's an elephant in the room and they're afraid to say something because they might say the wrong thing. So addressing this right away with honesty and talking about how you're feeling and giving your partner space to share his or her thoughts is very important. Intimacy is often impacted at this phase. A woman may not feel good about her body. She's not feeling well physically from treatment. And so both parties tend to withdraw for different reasons. And that's a shame, because this is a time when you need support from your partner. And there are many types of intimacy. It's not like people are 20 anymore. When you get older, your definition and experience and how you share intimacy shifts and changes. That's normal. So you need to be able to communicate with your partner or seek professional help about how are we going to maintain intimacy in our relationship now that this has happened? And I have different hormonal needs and different hormonal abilities, but we still want to maintain a close relationship.
Very sound advice, and something oftentimes I think it would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel sometimes this is where a good counselor might have an experience, so that both partners can sit in the room and have a professional psychologist, curate a conversation where people can express this, their fears, and then help someone navigate through those so that people are heard and understand. Because oftentimes when someone's been traumatized, I've noticed, even though their partner is trying to be empathetic, they don't have the tools or understanding, and often they don't know how to communicate their empathy, and the other person doesn't know how to hear their empathy because the noise in their head is too loud. I'm not going to do the right thing with my partner who's sick, and the other person is like, I'm sick, my partner thinks that I'm less than. That's a kind of a very dumbed down version, but that's where a professional can really open up the door for communication. So that's the third piece.
100%. I agree with you. That's really absolutely true.
So we got a couple more items here. And by the way, I'm loving this list, and we'll make a note and a summary of this inside this podcast for people, because everybody knows someone with breast cancer, and if you don't, you soon will. So we'll keep going. So let's go to number 4.
Number 4 is, how do you open up the hood of the car and look underneath? Monitoring your health with advanced testing. And unfortunately, when I work with women and they see their oncologist every 3, 4, or 6 months for a checkup, they do a CBC, which looks at if you're anemic or not, and they do a comprehensive metabolic panel. But excuse me, there's, at least 7 other blood works that I would want to know about. Inflammatory markers, what's happening in detail with your body's management of glucose. How is the health of your mitochondria? What's happening with circulating tumor cells and cancer stem cells? I mean, these are all medical valid tests, and they're not done. And the women don't know to ask them, not just ask, but insist. And then if there's a recurrence, you are then eligible immediately through your insurance for what is known as neogenomics testing through a lab called Caris Molecular Intelligence or neogenomics. And this should be standard of care. The doctors don't do this. So if you know this, you can say to the doctor, gee, this is my recurrence. My insurance is going to pay for this. Why isn't this test being done for me? Because what it will do is it provides people like myself with really details about what's happening with your genomics and how are they driving your cancer. But 2, for you and your doctor, it will match your cells, how they will respond best to which chemotherapy types. And number 3, it provides information if you're eligible for any clinical trials. This is life-saving information. So you're not, shooting in the dark and hoping for the best. Because if you've had chemotherapy regime 1, 2, 3, and then 2 years later you get it again, why would you want to do the same chemotherapy regime again? Because obviously it didn't work well. So we need to shift, we need to pivot and find out what's going on in the driving freeway of your cancer cells so that it's come back so quickly, right?
Very, very astute. And I think a lot of people, and we're fortunate listeners of the podcast and in our space might be a little bit more informed, but reality is most of our medical professionals are not hip to some of the new diagnostic tools that are available, and anything that they're not aware of often gets poo-pooed. That doesn't mean that it's not effective or leverageable, but it's up to us to move to I think, see our doctor not as the holy see of your life, but as an advisor who has a set of tools and a certain perspective, and that's a professional perspective that can produce certain results. But I think the advent and the growth of technology in this area, specifically testing and the variety of tests that aren't shared rigorously inside our conventional medical model, that having someone like yourself to be able to say, hey, let's look at these things. So, that's like you're adding another professional with another set of tools. It's like, you don't go to the plumber to get your electricity fixed. And that doesn't mean that the plumber is a bad guy. It just means the plumber doesn't know about electricity, and so on and so forth. So you want the right professional in the right place, providing the right diagnostic tools, and then providing interventions or adjustments, lifestyle habit development that will allow you for better outcomes with it. Would that be a good summary? Now that's number 4, I think. So I think we're on number 5, right?
Number 5 is how to create a healthy and joyful lifestyle. And notice the words healthy and joyful. It can't be like, oh, I hate this. Nobody wants to live a life where they're doing stuff that they hate, because it's going to build up resentment and anger, and that's not healing. There's a lot that needs to be changed, starting with divorcing the standard American diet and the standard American way of living, not watching so much television. The messaging on TV is very toxic. Finding activities that bring you joy that don't have anything to do with being a responsible adult. Is it gardening? Is it taking up art? Is it learning how to knit? Do you want to become a potter? I mean, do you have creative outlet? What is it that you do that gives your psyche space just to, roam free? Do you want to write a book? I mean, what is it for you? You want to write short stories, poetry, whatever. Do you want to put together photo albums of your families that have been, the photos have been in boxes for years? I mean, what is it that you want to do? You're not going to be watching television so much, so it gives you free time to do this new activity. How do you detoxify your home to the best of your ability so you don't have toxic cleaning products, laundry products, air fresheners? I hope nobody is using Febreze on their sofa. I had a woman who had unexplained infertility, and we got it down to the air sticks, the air filters, and Febreze. So if you have been using Febreze, you need to throw out that sofa and buy a new sofa. And that's because the chemicals in Febreze and those types of other products are absorbed into your skin, and they're estrogen disruptors and very toxic. So no Febreze on your sofas, please. And no dryer sheets. I mean, and no, over-the-counter standard laundry detergent. This is information that you don't know. You don't see commercials about this, right? So this is part of the creating a healthy and joyful lifestyle. What kinds of foods do you have in your pantry that support your good health? If you open up your pantry and you look in there, are there boxes of cookies and potato chips? Is there a lot of gluten products in there? Do you have candy in the house? Do you have over-the-counter, cookies and pastries? They're made with way too much sugar. They have gluten in them, and they have bad, unhealthy fats. Do you have ice cream in your freezer? That's a no-no. Is there lots of cow's milk and cheese in your refrigerator? So this is part of creating a healthy lifestyle, because you're creating healthy pantry that you can then open up and look and think about what you're going to make for dinner. We have exercise. It's a very important component, and I call it positive movement. So if you ask me to go swimming or ride a bike, I would say, no, thank you. I can't. It's not my cup of tea. But I found 2 forms of exercise that work for me. They're power walking, and then I lift weights. So what are the 2 forms that you can find that work for you? That's really important that you know that. And then where in your day, are you a morning exercise person, or you want to do it, at 3 or 4 o'clock? Where in your day are you going to give yourself 45 minutes to do that? I say every day, but I'll settle for 5 or 6 days a week. So where is that going to work for you? I mean, some people love a Peloton, and they sit there and they, think about they're riding in the Swiss Alps. I think that's fantastic. If you can sit on that bike that long, you have my it hurts my rear end too much, but everybody's really different. So find something that you love to do that will nourish you, that you got to get your body moving. So I think that, and then sleep. Let's talk about sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is a big problem for Americans, and part of it is poor sleep hygiene habits. You watch television and then you go on social media and you turn everything off and you think you're going to be able to go to sleep. And if you can't fall asleep, you're wondering why not. Or you've had 5 cups of coffee and the last one was at 4 o'clock and you're wondering why you can't sleep. So we need to really look at what's the gestalt of how you're getting yourself to sleep. Are you getting off of that stuff 2 or 3 hours in advance and reading nice calming books and taking a lavender bath or using essential oils? Are you taking some herb calming tinctures before you go to bed? And is your room dark? If you sleep with your phone next to your bed, you're not doing yourself a favor. Is the television in the bedroom? That is really not healthy. Is your computer by your bed? EMFs, as you mentioned, are real, even though you can't see them. Where is the computer energy storage facility? Is it 10 feet from your bedroom? That's not good. The router is what the word I was thinking about. That needs to be way away from where you sleep. So all of these things matter. And it takes time to put all of this together. And you need to do it. When you look at the list, you think, well, which one am I having the most difficult time with? And that's the one you choose first. And you don't go into the next one until you got the first one down. And notice I'm not using the words good or bad, because it's not good or bad. That's a split. You don't want to make things good or bad. It's difficult or what I need help with.
It's a beautiful list. And then what's a realistic time frame to start implement these and really get it down in the recovery cycle for someone who's been diagnosed with breast cancer?
Oh, it depends how much energy the woman has, but I'd say 3 to 6 months.
But that's pretty good, really, when you think about it. 3 to 6 months to, renovate your life in a positive way. And then I think if someone has, gotten hit with a diagnosis of breast cancer, saw it as an opportunity to make some shifts, recalibrate their shifts, get on their program, implement these things. What's the other side look like for people who have done this? What would you say, people that's kind of gone through this process, went through it and come out the other side? What are they saying about their breast cancer and its impact on their life?
I don't say this lightly, but a lot of them are very grateful. And that sounds really weird because it's a difficult journey. But they realized that they were in their soul, that they were unhappy. A lot of things were not working for them. And they had become, the story of the frog in warm water. This is true physiologically. You put a frog in warm water and you keep it there and you gradually increase the temperature and it will boil to death because it gets used to the hot water. And a lot of women have felt that way, that they were like unhappy in so many levels and they just kept piling up stuff that they felt unhappy about. And then they got this diagnosis and it was like a really big wake up call. Like my life is on the line. What am I going to get rid of? And what do I need to stop doing? And what do I need to change? And those women really committed wholeheartedly. And commitment is not expensive. That's an important concept. A lot of people feel like they don't have the money. It's too expensive. It's not expensive to commit to your health and to redoing your life. And these things can happen gradually, but every time you tackle one area, you're taking a huge step forward to recovering your health and restoring your life. And at the end of this, women have, first of all, their hair grows back, but it's different. And they go, well, that's who I am. This is just it for me now. This is what I look like. They have changed jobs. They've gotten rid of relationships that were not positive for them. They've worked on their marriage. They've gotten that better. Their relationships with their adult children or young children are more focused. And they found something that they love to do, which brings them nurturing and joy. And if you're sitting here thinking like, this is BS, that's not possible. It is possible, but it takes time. And they stop watching television. So they have a lot more time in the daytime to do these things and to spend in introspection and figuring out how can they organize their life around health and joy so that they feel fulfilled? And that takes time. And it is, I know people say to me, oh, you're making this up. I never make stuff up. And I'm not saying it was easy. And they had support from me, and they had their therapist and counselor and everything. But it takes time, and you have to get rid of what doesn't work, what's not important. Television, social media, waste of time and energy. And that, you'd be surprised, that frees up 2 to 3 hours for people. That's a lot of time to have fun and reconstitute your life in a more positive way.
Beautifully articulated, and in such depth and breadth. I think this podcast can serve a lot of people. I would inquire as to where people might find more information about what you do, your work, and how that is in the world. Feel free to tell us all, and tell us where, and tell us how, that we can find out and connect more with you, because this message needs to go out. It is Breast Awareness Month. So we want to get this information out to women and men who are associated with women, which are most men. Get it out there, get the message out there. Where can people find you and know more about your philosophy?
Well, I think your team is going to be posting with your link on your site. I think that's an important that women find you through that. But you can reach out to me through carolllourie.com, and I have a contact me page. And please say that you were referred from this podcast. But I want women to go through your site, so we set you up for that. But I want to say something about breast cancer, which we haven't touched on.
Please.
I have a more feminine perspective on breast cancer, because when Ronald Reagan started with the war on cancer, and before that, Betty Ford came out with that she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Breast cancer in the 60s was a shameful, horrible disease that women were supposed to feel really bad about themselves, and it was a secret and nobody talked about it. So when she came out with her diagnosis, it really changed how women felt about breast cancer. And then Ronald Reagan started with the war on cancer. So now we have, 62 years later, breast cancer is not a war. It's not something to fight or attack or go after or conquer, because who are you doing that with? Yourself. Breast cancer is part of you. So we need, as we've been talking about here, we need to develop a more feminine perspective about what is this disease, this diagnosis for you. And those words are inflammatory and create chaos and unhealthiness in your body. And we want to create calm and healing. So for those of you who have breast cancer, it's like, let's think about, and you have to come up with a mantra for yourself. What's a healing mantra for you that you can talk to your cells about? That doesn't have to do with fighting, conquering, we're at war, we're attacking. We don't want to use those words in relationship to your health and healing.
Beautifully said. This has been a great podcast, and I've learned a lot, and I hope our listeners have learned a lot. Of course, the links are all in the show notes. That you can check that out in our podcast notes. I want to thank you for listening, and I would encourage everyone who's listened to this to share this with the ladies in your life. Breast cancer is not something that just affects people with breast cancer. There is a pervasive and unconscious fear, I think, with a lot of women about getting this or developing this. And if we can do a little preemptive awareness beforehand, we'll have better outcomes over the long term. Dr. Carol Lourie, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you joining us. I so enjoyed this, and it was just excellent. And I know our listeners are going to love it. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule for this. Good luck on your trip to Sedona. I think you'll be speaking here. What was the topic you're speaking on in Sedona coming up?
The Healing Smoothie, incorporating the Healing Smoothie into your life. And it's, it's one of the cornerstones of my clinical practice and how I work with women with breast cancer. It's like the Healing Smoothie is delicious, and it delivers an enormous amount of targeted cellular nutrition to your healthy cells and blocks breast cancer cells. So that's what we want. So that's what I'm talking about.
I love it. Maybe you'll be able to share that with our friends over here at local juicery. Summer runs a great place, and she has great smoothies over there. So it's a good place to stop in.
I would love. I'm going to. We'll have to connect about that.
You bet. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we really appreciate it from all of us at Bioptimizers and the Awesome Health Podcast. I'm YT Lightheart. Thank you so much for joining. Please like, share, and distribute this information, because it just might save someone you love life. Take care. Have a great day.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.